Damascus, and they are very, very concerned for that missionary, a Christian missionary from your neck of the woods, Minnesota. So you're right. That's a first-hand report that they are going after the Christians.
Reports have emerged of Mar Mikhail Church being burned in the village of Al-Sura, Al-Kabria, located in the countryside of Swida, Syria. According to locals, the incident occurred after extremist armed groups took over the village. So,
Brandon, what was the news saying? First the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. So this is the nature of these jihadists. And that list of people that you read, not all of them, but a number of them I've been watching over the years, they are Muslims. And they will try to make out that they're peaceful Muslims. But at the end of the day, I believe they're they wouldn't call themselves jihadists, but they're backing the jihadists because it's for the same God, not the God of the Bible, the God of the Quran.
Which we know is Satan at the end of the day. Aaron Lavarco, our reporter on the ground, we're going to be sending him another love offering today, folks. Will you help us with that? WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. Aren't you thankful that Worldview Tube has a reporter on the ground in Israel? Do you benefit from it? If so, please help us support him and keep the broadcast coming. WorldviewFoundation.com. May God save America.
5 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
On my drive from Texas back to North Carolina, I don't know how many text messages I sent to my daughter and her mom. And every message I sent was this: tell Toby I love her. Tell her I'm on the way. Megan, don't give up hope. It was like that for every message, dude. Like 18 hours of messages that I sent to those two. And the last message I sent was like 1 a.m. And it was, I'll be there soon. I love you guys. I hope you're alive.
I went from having a full-time job to quitting all my contracts and actually believing my family was dead, to finding them alive, and then hearing all the stories of everyone in the area and in the region and what they've witnessed and what they've seen.
All communication was gone. People have no idea how bad it is. I flew over Chimney Rock, up Bat Cave. I was just mind blown.
I said, I don't know how, but I know Adam's coming.
Western North Carolina, it looks like a war zone. People of that area, they don't ask for help. I knew the only way that they were going to get help is if people stepped up. I looked at my family and said, I gotta go.
A bunch of rednecks came together and made shit happen.
Started putting out text messages and phone calls because there's a whole bunch of help that has to be had. I need water, I need food, Somebody coordinate this, somebody coordinate that. I need people on the ground.
Before we even had supplies to put on the helicopters, he was already basically running air ops from the truck.
We had a couple of helicopters land and offload supplies. And then that led to, well, there's these guys out at the Harley Davidson, and we just started running. We had 60 special operations volunteers. Dudes on active duty on leave. We had dudes from MARSOC, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Tier 1 operators, you name it.
We're staging out of a business that just got massacred, but they're giving us the property to work an emergency operations center out of here. Resupplies are going into the regions that cannot be accessible by ground. The bridges are blown, so our recon teams are telling us where we can and cannot send vehicles. We're dropping birds right on top of them with resupplies, or we're reaching out even further.
By day 10, we were running on average 42 air sorties a day. 2 million pounds of supplies we had brought in.
We've got former special operations guys who are cycling through here to kind of help us continue that lift.
It was just a pressure.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, man, here am I, Lord. Send me. Since before the American Revolution started, citizens in our country have answered this call, young and old, men and women. As in Isaiah 6:8, God presents circumstances to each of us that give us the opportunity to act on behalf of others. This is a deeply American value instilled by many things in our culture. And in my experience, our all-volunteer military force concept is one of those factors. But not during our military service necessarily, afterward. This core value of standing in the breach to help our fellow human beings, regardless of what it costs us personally, is why I have great hope for the future of this country, long after I've left this planet. And that leads me to today's story and guest that you saw just a snippet of there. The place my DNA comes from in this country happens to be Western North Carolina, where my father's family line still runs. And in the disaster response to Hurricane Elena, where, like my ancestors, leaders not on the government payroll stepped up on that ground when government at every level either would not or could not. And this is one of those stories where a single man at the beginning, a former U.S. Army Special Operations soldier, a small business owner, acted on his instinct to step into the fire for us. And an entire response operation sprang up around him and his band of brothers made up of volunteers who shared the same background that saved many lives and is still having a positive impact there today. Even former President Trump, at the time he was a former, visited the operation to talk to Adam and help focus the media on the disaster. Adam Smith is the guest today. He's the founder and CEO of Savage Freedoms, a family man, a U.S. Army Green Beret veteran, and he has graciously agreed to speak with us about this story today. Adam, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Rob, I really appreciate you having me on, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm a little emotional after watching that clip, as you probably are too.
Yep.
But I guess the first question I have is, how'd you find your daughter and your family, and what was the outcome of that?
Well, through the grace of God and an amazing network of human beings, we were able to conduct the very first aerial evacuation of the state. And we flew in a privately owned Bell 505 Jet Ranger helicopter and flown by a private pilot. And we landed in the front yard of my small house in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains along Highway 9. After circling overhead a couple of times to clear it to make sure that it was good to land. And from the air, we could see that the house was still standing and that the neighbor's house was still standing, but the neighbor's house 300 yards away had been washed away. And all the fear that had been built up over the last 18 hours, 18 hours of drive, the breaking communications for almost 36 hours by the time we got on the ground, it all faded away when that, it still makes me emotional. That beautiful little girl came walking around this hedgerow of trees. and she and her mom were in perfect condition. In fact, for her, it was just a big adventure. This big flood of water came up, and all the power was out, so they were cooking food in the fireplace and living by candlelight. But it was amazing. It was amazing to see her alive and well. Amazing to see her mom alive and well. And amazing to see all the neighbors in the community just come together in such a way that it's hard to explain, really.
Yeah. How big is that community where they were at? Relatively small, a couple hundred?
Yeah, pretty small in this immediate area. I mean, where we're at right here, everybody's kind of spread out. So next door neighbors are between 200 yards to 1,000 yards apart. Houses are hunkered back into haulers and up on the edge of the mountain or down in the valleys. Where we live is right along the Broad River. And for those who are following along with the storm, the Broad River is what washed away Bat Cave and Chimney Rock. And my ex-wife and my daughter, they live next door, and they live 40 yards off the Broad River. And the thing that saved them was the topography. Luckily, the shore on the far side of the river was lower than the near side, and a majority of the water washed the opposite direction, which was a grand benefit to them. However, our next door neighbors across the river had 6 feet of water in their house. Now, they survived. The house was destroyed, but it's been repaired since, and all of us have been able to move back into our homes. I think I was the last one to move back into my house here locally, and that was early May.
That's fantastic. Was it tough to get rebuild materials and those kind of things up in there?
Early on, I mean, a majority of the rebuilding stuff didn't happen until people didn't really truly start rebuilding until January and February. So months after the storm. Well, a lot of people, what happened down in Texas, and I was just in Texas 2 days ago. We have a team in Texas that are helping down there with recovery efforts. And it's a very interesting, it's very different, right? The entire infrastructure down there is still established. They have power, they have water, they have cell capability, they have Wi-Fi. The damage is isolated along those waterways, and some houses have been washed away. Here in Western North Carolina, it wasn't just the houses and the isolated areas along the water. It was over 2,600 landslides. Entire roads have been completely demolished and washed away. The road I live on still has single lane sections where the earth was completely washed away by the rivers. You had an entire region. It's a 225 to 250 mile radius where they had no power, no water, no cell, no Wi-Fi, for not just a couple of days, but for weeks. Yeah. It's a very different issue. So it wasn't even rebuilding materials that we were concerned about. The biggest challenge was just getting necessary supplies to the people that needed them early on.
Yeah, and tell folks how that developed, Adam, because I think it's a phenomenal story. Because in my opening I said, this centered around, really, from what I could tell, one individual, and then more and more people started gathering around you, and you stepped up, took a leadership role. But how did that develop? Did you call your buds from the Army, or what was the happenstance that occurred that led to the Harley Davidson shop with a landing zone at it, with 24/7 air operations running from it, and even the 18th Airborne Corps, I think, set up a desk in your operations center.
Yeah, we had the 18th Airborne Corps set up a desk. We had the National Guard set up a desk with us. It really, to your point, what you said is 100% it. It started with a selfish desire to get to my daughter and her mom. And en route, I did a post on Friday as we were racing back from Texas. My fiance, she said, "Why don't we catch a flight?" And I was like, "No, the airport's going to be shut down. We got to drive back. Plus, we need a vehicle anyway." So we just hammered down. We broke if there's any law enforcement watching, we literally broke every traffic law from Austin, Texas, back into Western North Carolina over an 18-hour period. We sent a post out at around noon, I think, on Friday and said, "Hey, we need to find a helicopter. If anybody has access to one, please help us." There's no way that I think we're going to get access back from a couple of conversations that I had with guys that had gotten out of the area and gotten Wi-Fi signal or cell service.
Right.
And that started it. And then Saturday, we did the air evacuation. We got them out. We came back in. We did another supply run to drop off materials and supplies to people from the local community that I'm connected to. And then Sunday, my buddy Johnny Wilson showed up from Texas. And Johnny Wilson's a former Green Beret. He's a phenomenal human being. And Johnny got here and he said, what can we do? And Johnny's network and my network, it quintupled our ability to outreach to the special operations community. And then we met up with another nonprofit called Charlie Mike. And they're a veteran nonprofit, and they were comprised of both special operations and non-special operations veterans. And that meant we went from 2 to 3 to 6 to 10, and then by Monday evening we were at 50, and by Tuesday afternoon we were at 170, and then we maintained about 150 to 120 to 150 every day for 50 days. And as we built momentum, people heard and they got word. And we started pushing out and embedding with the National Guard, embedding with the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center of Buncombe County. And the miracles, Rob, the miracles were just never ending.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the first priority was to try to save lives. And you got your family's life saved and then started working it. How people like numbers, Adam. How much operational impact on life saving in those initial days do you think you guys had?
I think it's hard to quantify. I can give you some examples on stuff that we were able to do. So active evacuations for medical emergencies, I think our number was something like 50 or 60. But we were able to avoid a large amount of medical evacuations because of our ability to get insulin into the mountains where people with diabetes were cut off. Most people with diabetes have between a 2-week or a 30-day supply of insulin. And depending on where they were in that insulin cycle, we had a lot of people running out of insulin in the field. So our ability to get access to oxygen, our ability to get access to insulin, our ability to get access to power, because we were able to drop off generators throughout local communities and backfeed them into the system. So community shelters and hubs could have power again, and they could cook and they could provide warm meals, and they provided showers for people that didn't have running water. We ran into an issue. We were going to do medical evacuation for a diabetic emergency, and the bird was sitting on the HLZ getting ready to take off. We didn't have any insulin. And what we came to find was that if we verbalized it, it would happen. So all we had to do was just say we needed this and it would happen. And you could hear the ripple amongst the FOB, and everybody, you could hear them all saying like, we need insulin. We need insulin. We need insulin. And a van pulled up at the front gate, and he said, hey, what do you guys need? And our front gate guy was like, we need insulin. And he goes, oh, hold on. And he reaches in the back seat and he pulls this mini cooler out. And it's one of those mini coolers like, I can't think of it, but it's packed to the brim with insulin. He goes, oh, here you go. And Pork Chop was his name working the gate. Couldn't believe it. He grabbed this cooler and he calls on the radio, hold the bird, hold the bird, hold the bird. And he runs the cooler to the helicopter, and he gets to the helicopter and he hands it off. And that helicopter then proceeded. And at this point, we didn't have any insulin. That helicopter proceeded to fly insulin missions all over Western North Carolina and delivered and emptied that cooler of insulin within the first 3 hours. And by the time he got back, we had received over 500 to 1,000 bottles of insulin. And we were able to provide insulin throughout all of Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. And so it's, when you quantify numbers as hard rescues, we probably had between 40 and 50. But when it comes to unquantifiable impact on avoiding having to have medical disaster rescues, like that was a big thing for us.
Yeah, I think that's one of the unique things with this particular disaster was the ability to keep people in place and provide them the materials that they need to save their lives instead of having to medevac them out, so to speak. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, though, Adam, I want to talk about the Americans, and we'll show a little clip of some of the guys that you've documented that were there to help you. And these Americans that responded are just amazing. You think Adam Smith is something? Wait till you see this. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Pressure cooker, man. I definitely feel like the events of my life led me to this. There's no doubt in my mind God was just preparing me for this.
I joined the Army in 2012, straight out of high school. I went on to join 3rd Ranger Battalion, did 2 tours to Afghanistan. When you leave the service, there's an emptiness. When I pulled into the Harley-Davidson and I met Adam for the very first time, I knew I was where I needed to be. This has changed me forever.
The mission turned into how do we deliver hope and impact to the community and also deliver an opportunity for the volunteers to be connected to something bigger than themselves. Savage Freedom's relief operations was an unintentional, organically driven, purposeful development, in my opinion, willed into existence by God. All of the miracles that took place, all the people that showed up, all of the good intentions, all of the people with integrity, all of the opportunity to help. If it was me, it had never happened.
The purpose of Savage Freedoms is to bring hope to the lives of those who have lost everything. With light in our eyes and hope in our heart, with a warm handshake and a broad smile.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest today is the founder and CEO of Savage Freedoms, Relief Operations. The part of the men that were on that team were talking there, and Adam, those of us that have served in the military, enlisted and officer, in the 20th and 21st century, we tell people all the time that these kids are the best of the best. And you hear things like, you hear little snips sometimes, like, well, they just joined because they needed a job out of high school, or they weren't eligible for college, blah, blah, blah. And then I tell them I have 5 college degrees. One of them is from Harvard back when it was credible. But I'm glad you did. I'm glad that you guys put that video together. I mean, you can't show everybody, but you can show the heart of servant leadership that we teach our men and women that wear this country's uniform. And to me, that's the core of why we can be successful in situations like this.
There is absolutely zero question in my mind. And what people don't realize, and I wish I could name every single person in every one of those clips, and I think I can name most of them, but a majority of what you see are special operations veterans. They're also first responders, highly skilled and highly trained first responders that recognize that something had to happen. And they recognized where it wasn't happening. And they also recognized what group of people were just, and excuse my language, were getting shit done. And they wanted to be a part of that. They wanted to be a part of doing something greater than themselves. They wanted to be a part of doing something better. And it was really, truly phenomenal. We had guys from Ranger Battalion. We had guys from 24th STS. We had guys from from tier 1 intelligence assets and tier 1 special operations assets on permissive leave. We had veterans, newly retired full-bird colonels from like the asymmetric warfare group that was there. Every major I would say every special operations unit in the United States military in one way or another was represented in those videos or on the ground in Western North Carolina. And I think to the idea of servant leadership also demands a level of humility in the ability to be a follower of something greater than yourself. Every day we started with a prayer. Every day we ended with a prayer. Every day we showed up and linked up with people in the field. And if we had the time and we didn't have to hop back on the bird and take off again, we would stand and we would pray with whomever we linked up with. And I think the facts of servant leadership with the brave men and women of the military, it's not because they didn't have any other option. It's not because they couldn't make it into school. I was in college and dropped out so I could go full time. I speak 3 languages. I don't have a college degree. Don't care to have one. Don't need one to be successful, right? A majority of those guys that are there are far more intelligent than a lot of the people I know with college degrees are, and they don't have them either. It is the ability and capacity for someone to recognize that there is a service greater than themselves that must be done. And that is every one of those people.
Yeah, and the word got out in spite of the lack of official comms. You know, you mentioned all the comms being down. The word got out. I mean, I know I reached out to my donors and my political action committee. We can give to charities, and we donated funding to a little group that was bringing a mobile medical piece in, and worked with former CB fireman Chad Caton. I think you guys met him because he came by the shop there and was bringing General Flynn around at some point. But the word got out. So all these resources, I don't know if you knew it or not, but from what I could tell, were flowing in. And it was really because we were seeing people like you, the guys from the United Cajun Navy that had their helicopters flying around, and Samaritan's Purse. And you worked and embedded, I think, some of the nonprofits in the operation, right? How was that working with those guys? I love Samaritan's Purse. It's one of my favorites.
Great organization. They're a phenomenal organization, and they're so well equipped. It's really impressive at their capability and what they can do. One of the things that we found in this being Whistleblower Wednesday, I think we have to talk about this aspect of things.
We are.
So one of the things that we found was that there was a dramatic lack of common operating picture. And in that dramatic lack of common operating picture, and for those who don't understand this military lingo, common operating picture is understanding the situation as a whole versus just your little window of understanding on the ground. So if we can understand the whole common operating picture, then we can understand how our one small effort plays a larger strategic role in the overall picture. And there was such a huge lack of this COP. So one of the things that we said we had to do from early on was we have to have a common operating picture. How do we make that happen? Well, EOCs are inundated, and a majority of the Emergency Operations Center personnel are also victims of the storm. A majority of the local authorities are victims of the storm. In fact, where just around the corner from where we were staged, there was a house that was completely submerged that had one of the Buncombe County Sheriff's officers living there, and he was sitting on his roof, and he couldn't help. He literally was trapped by floodwaters, and it submerged the sheriff's officer vehicle. So with that being said, with local rescue capabilities being extremely hindered and also victims, with state level assets not necessarily being super clear on the overall common operating picture, we said, look, we have to fix this problem. So we turned our little operations center into a tactical operations center as best as possible, and we interacted and communicated with as many nonprofits in the region. So everyone from Samaritan's Purse to Mercury One with Glenn Beck to United Cajun Navy to Aerial Recovery, Operation Hilo, all of Operation Providing Hope, all of these nonprofits were doing good work, but it was so disjointed that there wasn't a whole lot of common driven effort, if that makes sense. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make the effort common, and we wanted to help everybody understand how to deconflict what they were doing so we could have faster and more efficient success on the back end. and working with the nonprofits. Let me just say that the nonprofit space in general, I have found to be interesting. There's a lot of different organizations vying for attention in order to promote what they're doing so they can gain donors' dollars. In that aspect of things, one of the things I recognized on the ground was I didn't see that. At least in the first 45 to 50 days, I didn't see that. I just saw people who were good American citizens, they were good American patriots, and they wanted to do right by their neighbors.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. I think most people that are outside of government, and some inside of government too, when you see the situation on the ground, you can understand it. Your instinct is to try to help instead of being bureaucratic about it or self-serving and those kind of things. I'm kind of reserving the next segment for the governmental piece of it because I want to talk about that at length and get your thoughts on both the integration of the initial response, which really generated your action, I believe, once you recognize the lack of response. And it doesn't matter what the cause was; it's just there was a lack of response. From that to to how you were able to maybe get them energized or integrated, and then once things happened, like when 18th Airborne Corps sent the boss out, and the National Guard came out, former President Trump came out, and all that. I want to talk through all of that because I think there's some lessons learned, Adam, that you're probably one of the few individuals that can speak to it from an experience perspective firsthand on the ground, and that it has that skill set. So we'll talk about that in the next segment and beyond, probably into the last segment, because it's critically important that we get those lessons documented and that people that are in the government now start getting an understanding of what you all learned so that it can be applied. I mean, that's one of the things we do in the military, folks, is we do these things called after action reports or debriefs. And we take rank off. We are very frank with each other. And I want to give Adam Smith an opportunity to do that here in this next segment. And we'll be right back with him because it is Whistleblower Wednesday. And we need to talk some hard facts and hard truths and get this stuff documented. We'll be right back. Savage Freedoms. Go follow him.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
And forth, and the other one just being lazy underneath a rock. And I just kept thinking, like, being in the military really does create a cage in a lot of ways. It limits your ability to operate. It does give you focus. It gives you identity, mission, and purpose, but it defines identity, mission, and purpose for you. It takes away personal agency in a lot of ways with regards to how you identify yourself. Now, I'm not saying the military brainwashes you in any way. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that for the longest time, my identity was the hat that I wore on my head or my MOS. It wasn't Adam, the content of my character. It was whatever job I did.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and we're talking about Savage Freedom's relief operations in western North Carolina from Hurricane Helena. and the founder and CEO of Savage Freedoms, Adam Smith, is with us today. And Adam, I found that little clip. I think it was on maybe your Instagram account or X account. I don't remember, but it struck me because it's something that I personally struggled with too. Look, I spent from the time I was 17 till I was 49 and a half years old, almost 50, in a uniform for the country. So, I mean, you really crafted that. But the reason why I wanted to show it today was because your team and you and everybody else that pitched in to help, from flowing dollars and supplies and resources to your operations center and beyond to the victims, we broke out of our cage that you talked about because I've been out for over 11 years. So I've learned that, you notice I'm not wearing a hat. I hate hats, although I have a lot of them. But that's hard to do. It's hard to do. But in order to achieve the victory that just happened, and I just want to read something from Steve Baker's article from The Blaze today. He documented some numbers here. SFRO delivered nearly 6 million pounds of supplies and flew over 2,500 air sorties out of he didn't say this, but out of a ad hoc, slapped together through volunteer work and sheer courage and leadership. And that was massive. That's a massive operation. And you can't just be an Army guy, is what I'm saying. And that's why I liked your clip, because it doesn't work that way. People would look at us, in your team, especially in a lineup, and say, these guys, there's no way they could do that.
These guys are criminals
like that. Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. Exactly right. But they've learned what you were describing there, that you can't just be what the hat is that's on your head. And I think that the skills that we learn in the military, not to blow our own horn a little bit, helps us achieve that if we get it. I mean, not everybody is able to get it right off the bat. It takes time for each individual. But yeah, so you mentioned the response of the government at various levels. I mentioned it. We all know it. Give folks the nitty gritty of what you saw and experienced at the local, state, and federal level at the very beginning of this. Once you started pulling the reins on, and saddling up.
Local rescue early on, when the water was really getting off. I mean, it was when the water was really, really like raising dramatically. Local rescue did a heck of a job. You had a lot of firefighters that would self-mobilize. Remember, there was no power, no electricity, so no power, no communications. The emergency management services repeater systems were completely down. Cell towers were down. TVs were down. Radios would receive signal, but nothing else was getting out. So there was no way for cross communications to happen between local fire departments and emergency management services around the counties. So they self-deployed. I heard a story of a wilderness first responder who was a former firefighter that trekked something like 3 miles with someone on a handmade drag skid to get them out because a tree fell on their leg and broke their leg, and there was no way for them to walk out. The local town of Black Mountain, they mobilized the fire department and were doing swift water rescue and high water rescue. And there was a multitude of neighbors and civilians that joined in that effort in Black Mountain. The National Guard had deployed, and the National Guard, when I was on the ground on Saturday afternoon, I heard National Guard helicopters and saw them flying overhead. And I don't know what they were doing at the time, but they were on the ground, right, at the state level. Now, let's talk about the reality. The National Emergency Management System in general, if we look at lessons learned on the ground, it's broken to an extent. There's a battle with individuals who want to control their little fiefdoms. So sometimes you'll have fire chiefs that say, this is my space, stay out of it. Or local sheriff's officers or sheriffs that'll say, this is my county, you stay out of it. That was a major issue because it limited the ability to deconflict effort. We're actually seeing the same thing happen in Texas to an extent. And it's not individuals who don't want to work together. It's individuals who are doing a great job. They're just not regularly reporting what they're doing into a centralized hub where people can maintain that common operating picture. We also saw it in Virginia, in West Virginia. We saw it in parts of Tennessee and Tennessee and Kentucky over the last 7 months. Now, here's the real problem.
Governor Cooper failed multiple times. He failed the state. He failed his constituents. He failed the citizens in North Carolina. He was slow to declare a major disaster in order for it to get approved by the president. For people who don't know, a state of emergency must be declared by the state or the county, then approved by the state, and then it gets sent to FEMA as a state of emergency, which gives an alert. Then the state governor must request an approval for a major disaster declaration to be approved by the president. Once that happens, it activates the Stafford Act. Now, FEMA sent USAR teams. And for everyone who hates FEMA, you don't have a lot of reasons not to dislike FEMA. It's an inefficient, ultimately ineffective agency that's too bloated with bureaucracy. And over the last 20 years has had so much mission creep outside of what it was originally built to do.
Yeah.
It's not effective. And that's a fair criticism.
Sure.
FEMA had USAR teams. Now, for those who don't know USAR, it's Urban Search and Rescue Teams. They have task forces all over the United States. So FEMA deployed USAR teams into the region, and those guys did a heck of a job. They were just like the trained volunteers or the local trained firefighters, because that's what they're comprised of firefighters and first responders that leave their home, leave their job, and deploy with FEMA to go do this job. And they're good people with good intentions. The problem with FEMA is the bureaucratic response. The accounting lines slow down the process of moving USAR teams to counties that are more needed. The approval process for the Stafford Act to get activated based on a major disaster declaration is slow to move funding. And then what's more is once funding is approved from FEMA to move from the Fed to the state, it goes from executive to executive, not the Fed to the state legislature. So once those dollars come to the state, again, Governor Cooper failed at his declaration. He failed at requesting immediate aid for approval for a major disaster declaration. The 18th Airborne Corps was stood up and then stood down and then stood up a second time. Then they were finally able to deploy into the region. I think a total of 1,500. No, I'm sorry. I think a total maybe close to 3,000 total soldiers were on the ground. And the active duty personnel came from Fort Campbell in Kentucky, not from Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And they were here until Thanksgiving. And then I think just before Thanksgiving, everybody demoved, including the National Guard. On top of that, the Army National Guard in North Carolina has something like 1,200 or 2,000 engineers, Army engineers that are part of the National Guard element here in North Carolina. I've never seen them. I don't think they were activated. I've never seen them do anything on the ground. And the amount of roads and bridges that were out, the access to their heavy equipment assets would have been a huge benefit early on for debris clearing, bridge rebuilding, and the whole 9 yards. When Governor Stein came into office, Governor Stein's first action as governor was not to visit Western North Carolina. It was to get barbecue in Raleigh. So again, we have another governor that steps in who is continuing to fail within the people of North Carolina. After Trump took office, we started to see a dramatic shift happen in funding. We saw an uptick in funding. We saw an uptick in activity. We saw debris removal efforts double down and actually start moving forward, and approval for dollars to come into the state. Now, the question I have, and I think the question we have to ask is, of the now, I think, close to $3 billion that's been approved for disaster relief and recovery in Western North Carolina, where's the money going to go? There was recently an expose done on a company, I believe, called SLS Enterprises. I'll have to look it up, by a guy named Dead Crab Films on Instagram. He exposed this company, and the company charged $22 million for a shower and laundry facility that I think the operating cost was something like $148,000 or $162,000 a day. They were open from 9 a.m. until like 5 p.m. and then shut down. And I don't think they were open on the weekends. The battle that we're facing with FEMA, and the battle that we're facing when it comes to the reorganization of FEMA, is that FEMA as it is, I mean, let's go one step further. 10 days after the new fiscal year of 2025, so fiscal year turnover is October 1st, 10 days into the new fiscal year, FEMA came out and did a presser and said, we're going to have to slow down spending. We've already spent 50% of our allocated annual budget.
Yeah, I remember that.
Their allocated annual budget's like, I think it's 18 or $20 billion.
That's right.
So
if we're looking at FEMA as an organization and its effectiveness and efficiency, and then we look at the order that came down that said you will stop paying for illegal aliens and their lodging and cell phones and food cards and everything else. And 10 days later, $24 million from FEMA was allocated to New York City in order for New York to pay for hotels, right? That person was relieved of duty, but that is an indicator of why it's broken.
Yeah. We need an organizational reorg that divests all these non-mission related activities somewhere else. But the funding, I mean, the mission of the organization isn't really emergency management anymore. I don't think it ever was. It's to get resources to people like you who are having the worst day of their lives as quickly as possible, to get them back on their feet, save lives, and help communities move past this stuff, right?
Yeah. Logistics facilitator and a holder of money. If we could do this right and we put the impetus responsibility on the state, what would be very simple for FEMA to do is to step away from trying to manage the DOT and HUD and all the other aspects of community rebuilding, because we already have federal agencies that do that, and they've already got federal emergency disaster dollars allocated to them for that. They can connect to the state level, and FEMA can do block grants to the state based on overall projected damage for rebuilding and cleaning and clearing. And FEMA can have pre-staged, which they already do, emergency relief materials and goods that can be pre-staged. And if we privatize disaster relief, and I say this, and people are going to be like, why would we do that? The federal government should have that responsibility. One, it's non-constitutional. And two, even with the Stafford Act, still technically non-constitutional. And two, if we privatize disaster relief, and we supplement that privatization from the states and the Fed, then we don't have to wait for a major disaster declaration approval from whomever the executive is, and we get to bypass the political hangering that takes place between the left and the right for either a Democrat state and a Republican president, or a Republican state and a Democrat president. And we saw that real time. Like, people don't realize this. We watched real time a liberal governor drag his feet to declare a major disaster declaration in order to get it approved because a majority of the area is red. Now, I don't know if that was his motivation, but I can only assume, based on the time of the year, the fact that we were in a full election cycle across the board in both state and federal levels, and we saw, hey, FEMA, when they went to Florida, avoid homes that have Trump signs in them. That even came down from middle line FEMA leadership within the bureaucracy. Guys, I know that didn't come from the director. I know it didn't come from the deputy director, and I know it didn't come from the regional directors, because senior leadership, in all of my experience, really do care. They want to help people. Absolutely. It's the midline leaders, the embedded bureaucrats, that they're the ones trying to push their political ideology amongst the workers.
Well, we've got to take our last break, Adam. When we come back, though, I want to give you a chance to tell the audience how you've been able to give this type of information feedback to the agencies, and whether it's happened, and if it's happened, has it been ingested in, at least to be looked at? And we got a couple of questions from the audience. We'll be right back with the CEO and founder of Savage Freedoms, Adam Smith, right here on the Rob Maness Show.
Break down my walls, but I will rise again. 'cause I stand tall in my environment. How could I ever close my eyes and stay silent since? But I will rise again.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. Here am I, Lord, send me. That little video was just a view into Western North Carolina locals as they get through recovery and continue this recovery. And I'm talking with the CEO and founder of Savage Freedoms, Adam Smith, today about the experience and what's going on. And Adam, before we continue on with our discussion, I want to just take a question real quick from the live audience. They've been waiting patiently, and I've got at least two hands over there. So go ahead, Shell.
We have Margot, sir.
Well, good afternoon, Adam Smith. It's Margot from Western North Carolina. First and foremost, I want to thank you for everything that you've done. Yeah, thank you so much for everything that you've done for Western North Carolina. You're truly inspirational. You brought people together from across this area in a nonpartisan way, and you made us all want to be a part of helping each other. I saw people in my own community come to help you specifically. And my question's very basic. When are you running? Because we need someone that doesn't say things like, you're sending out misinformation and you're not helping like Tom Tillis did and Chuck Edwards did. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, Margot. I appreciate that. God love her.
Yeah. All right. I got to take the other hand since that was a short answer. Go ahead. One more hand, then we'll finish this discussion before the show closes. Go ahead, Shell. Thank you, Margot.
We have Liz, sir.
Good afternoon, Colonel. Good afternoon, Mr. Smith. I'm also a Smith, no relation. I first of all want to thank you for showing people that we don't just blow up things. Okay, I was a Marine. That we do build things, that we do learn organizational skills, how to be followers and how to be leaders. Thank you so much for doing that. And my question to you is, I love Margot's, and I think you should run. But my question to you is, are you working with anyone to help these people develop plans for emergencies, and that you do need a central place where people are reporting so you're not overlapping things and or missing areas completely because no one knows what anybody else is doing?
That's a good question. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. That's a really good question. So one of the things that we've been working on diligently since the storm is after action review, lessons learned in a white paper to help the federal government really understand how they can reorganize and then reoperationalize FEMA. Part of that reorganization is a new training methodology that doesn't just focus on, for those of you who don't know, right now, a majority of training that takes place, so training between the National Emergency Management System and services between the Fed and the state is usually around terror operations. So they're isolated terror attacks 9 times out of 10, and it's considered a mass casualty event, and that's the trainings. About 90% of trainings that take place focus on that. One of the things that's not happening at the national level or at the state level is a multiple infrastructure, long-term recovery disaster response, which is what we saw in Western North Carolina. And so one of the things that we've been really working diligently on is we've been in communication with, we were in communication with the former acting director of FEMA and the former acting deputy director of FEMA. We're in communication. We're working on getting a meeting with the current director of FEMA. We've been in communication with both senators and congressmen from across the country, to include congressmen and senators from Texas to Florida to North Carolina. We've spent a lot of time in DC this year, and I'll tell you that it is the swamp. Every time I leave DC, I feel icky. But there's been a lot of conversation being had in order to try and move the needle. Again, we come back to
this excuse that the wheels of government turn ever so slowly. And I think we're seeing that not to be the case. We have a new administration that stepped in and within the first 6 months have just hammered change across the board. I think we have the opportunity to do the same thing. It's just a matter of maintaining a consistent effort to really make that change. So to answer your question, yes, we are. That's how we're doing it. How's it been taken so far? All the conversations that we've had have been well received and a generous interest in the takeaways and also what other possibilities of recentering FEMA's focus as well as incentivizing innovation at the state level for disaster response.
Yeah, I see three things. There's got to be a reorganization and divestiture of all the mission creep. Number one. Two, a restructuring of how the financial dollars flow, as you mentioned, so that they are rapidly able to be given to the folks that need them closest to the disaster on the ground without political interference, right? And then, man, Mr. President, we got to get some full-time people in this, not just the top senior leadership positions, but the mid-levels too, that are all on board with this effort. Because if he's going to keep FEMA, and I don't know if the president's going to keep FEMA or not, but if he's going to keep it, the sooner he gets people appointed that can take these reins and look at feedback like your input from you guys down there, and maybe even leverage that. And leverage your experience, maybe make you a special government employee like we did Musk for Doge or something, or maybe even get you to agree to come on full time for a couple of years to help do it. I'm
not opposed.
If I were running FEMA, you'd be one of the people I'd call to ask to do that.
Well, you've seen what happened, though, Rob. You have seen what happened, right? They formed a committee. So this is my favorite thing. They formed a committee to review the problems in order to make recommendations on how to change an agency that could easily be. I don't understand the difference here. We put Tom Homan in charge of the Border Patrol and said, Tom, go do your thing. And he has taken the reins. He's reorganized. He's reoperationalized, and he executes based on the constitutionality of the law and the laws of border crossings. Why haven't we done the same thing with FEMA? And I can tell you why, because the mission creep has been so great and FEMA has got their fingers into so many different things that to strip it away entirely right away could actually be a detriment to the functionability of other agencies in the country. And I think that, and I think that the former director Cameron wasn't wrong. I think he was right. I think FEMA going away as a whole is not in the best interest of the American people. However, I think that FEMA as it stands has not been operating in the best interest of the American people, and it must go away as it is, and it must be reinvented as to what it could be so it actually functions the right way.
Yeah, and I think I don't know the president other than very brief, shaking his hand a couple of times and following him and everything. And but I understand reorgs and I understand mission. And that's what I think he intends when he says, like, it needs to go away. I think what he's really saying is what you just said. And that is, it's got to go away in its present form and be reconstituted into what will get the mission done, because the mission is being hampered by the very organizational structure and lack of training and lack of financial streamlining and lack of coordination with the local responders. And I think we should explore the idea of privatizing emergency response. I think we should explore the idea. I was talking to one of the lieutenant governors in a coastal state the other day, and he's like, well, why do they train people on the computer for a couple of days to come down here and do damage assessment? They ought to be using the folks that are here doing damage assessment and take the reports directly from them. Those kinds of initiatives need to occur.
The problem with the federal government is that there is no incentive to innovate. It's very easy to spend other people's money, but when it's your money on the line, as an entrepreneur and as a small business owner, anybody who owns a small business understands this. We have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to our company to make it as profitable as possible and reduce as much cost as possible. The federal government doesn't operate like that. They have always operated from a cost plus mentality, which is It may cost $1 billion, but really we're so over budget, we're just going to go ahead and say, well, it's $3 billion now. If the federal government could shift its mentality from we are the largest look, the federal government is the largest enforced nonprofit because it technically is not supposed to generate its own revenue. So it forces its populace to pay taxes under threat of duress, arrest, or criminality in order for you to provide revenue. So your tax dollars go to things that you don't want them to go to. So why is it that we continue to perpetuate this negative cycle of spending and this out of control cycle of a lack of fiduciary responsibility to the people? And we create an incentivized innovation to actually reduce spending and utilize our dollars in a more effective and efficient manner. Well, the only way we do that is if we shift into the private market. And if we can have a private industry that understands that responsibility, they will become more effective. They will become more efficient. We will reduce the overall deficit. We will reduce the amount of spending that's happening at the federal level. And maybe at some point, we can start holding to account these politicians that speak out of one side of their mouth and then spend our dollars out of the other side. I would love for that to happen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we have an opportunity with this president because he recognizes when he sees people, he just needs leaders that some that understand government but aren't wedded to the bureaucracy and its inertia and its weight, but are wedded to the policy and are loyal to the policy and the Constitution, and that recognize other people that are willing to come into the organization to help do the reorganization and streamlining. And actually, you'll save money and still be able to do the mission more effectively if some of these ideas or most of these ideas really get implemented. Adam, got about a minute left, man. Tell folks how you're doing today, what still the needs are from Western North Carolina, because I know that everything's not perfect, and then more people can find you.
Yeah, short and sweet. Come and visit us at savageops.org. You can donate there. We have a donate link. We're still rebuilding homes in Western North Carolina. People are still living in trailers. It's going to take a large effort to make this actually happen. So the more support that we can get locally, the better off we are at the end of the day. And if you want to support the larger mission, you want to support Savage Operations in the larger mission, you can do that as well. You go to savageops.org. We're looking at creating that privatized effort through nonprofit industry for us to be able to go out, pre-deploy, bypass the Stafford Act, and deploy people where they have to go, focusing on utilizing first responders, soft veterans, and people that really know what the heck they're doing so we can get the job done.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks for staying in the fight. Thanks for helping everybody. God bless you. You're in our...
Better science leads to better outcomes. So by understanding the science in much more intimate detail, delivering a value product that is so different from anybody else.
So when we're stepping outside into seasonal changes, low humidity, sunlight, pollution, all of these things get communicated as stress on the top layer of skin that produces free radicals, and they're bad news for collagen networks. They're going to break down the collagen network and collapse that beautiful tensile strength of your skin. And so that's how we end up with fine lines and wrinkles. Bella Grace is really an elevated formula.
Better than the competition for very obvious reasons. First of all, we're delivering great collagen. We're delivering Verisol, which is the world's most studied form of collagen. So we're starting at a foundation that's really top notch.
So here is a lady today. She's taking the elixir, arthritis in her hands. She could not close her hands.